Hey guys, Anna here, and in today's 20-minute painting challenge, I'll show you how to paint a realistic eye in just 20 minutes. This one's going to be so much fun, so if you want to follow along, you can download the reference photo in the link in the video description below, and grab your paints, grab your brushes, and let's go. I'm using a limited palette today. This is transparent oxide brown, cadmium red, ultramarine blue, yellow ochre light, titanium white, and ivory black. And that's really all I need for today. These are my brushes for today. I've got a number 4 Rosemary & Company Ivory Long Filbert, a number 8 Rosemary Pure Sable Series 77, and I have a Trekell Legion 9100 round size 6. I've also got some vine charcoal, and I intend to use that to sketch in my design first. My canvas today is just a 6x8 multimedia artboard. It's one of these plein air Clausen's linen artist panels. You can get these in packages of 3. They're pretty affordable. This panel I have toned with kind of a blue-gray. I don't remember what color I used. I think it was just whatever was left on my palette. And I let it dry, so I'm working on a dry tone today. All right, let's jump right in. I'm going to set my timer starting now. And grabbing my vine charcoal first. You know, this is really just a study, and I usually approach the portrait as a whole a little bit different than I would with an eye. Ooh, I already decided that's too high. That's the nice thing about the vine charcoal, though. You can just kind of wipe it out and start over if you need to. So just wanted to make sure I left room for the eyebrow here. And I'm treating this as, you know, it's different in the sense that normally I wouldn't paint an eye all by itself. When I do a portrait, I'm looking at the whole, really, and trying to paint big shapes first, followed by the small shapes. I can still approach the eye in a similar way, in the sense that I'm starting with the larger masses, the light and the shadow, and moving into my smaller shapes from there. So really all I needed to do was kind of block in where I wanted it to be placed. The next thing I'm going to do is grab some transparent oxide brown, a little bit of white, and maybe some of that cadmium red. Let's grab a little ivory black just to cool that down. And just dive right in. I am thinking, okay, already I was starting to think in smaller shapes rather than large shapes. I am thinking that usually I start with more of a middle value, but I want to start with some of my darker tones. They're not exactly like shadows, but they are definitely on the darker side of the middle value range, and that way I can hopefully build up the shape of the eye socket before I get too caught up in details. Just going to thin that down a tiny bit with some Gamsol. I started with just straight up paint, and I'm finding that if I want to work real fast, I might need to thin it down just for some of these initial base colors. With an eye, you know, I'm not painting this life size, I'm painting it slightly larger than life size. But one thing you want to keep in mind is identifying where the corners of the eye are. The outside corner is always going to be slightly higher than the inside corner. The reason being that the eye has to drain through those tear ducts. And if they were at the same plane, or if the inside corner was higher, it wouldn't drain properly. And so the eye was just designed in that amazing way. So there we go. I've put in some of my darker tones here at the outside of the eye. I've got kind of a block in for the eyebrow, and then hinting at the nose right there. Then I'm going to take some more of that white that I started with. Let's add a little bit of cadmium red. That might be too light. We'll add some ochre here as well. And then maybe mix in some of those darks so that we get a little bit of a gradient here on the palette. Testing out a section, I want a little bit more red in there. And I'm going to use this as my main skin tone. The color that I'm seeing that's mostly in the light and that reflects this particular person's skin color. Look at that, we already have an eye. Just 2 values so far, and it already starts to come together. But again, I'm not really thinking about any of the details in here just now. Just trying to get a sense for placement on the canvas. I've already was in the middle of talking, and now I've already introduced another value here just by adding a little bit of white to that. Now I'm going lighter and building up along the edge of the nose, and then of course the brow, the forehead, that bony section of the forehead where that catches the light. So of course that's going to be lighter than this down here. And then the top lid catches some of that light as well. And it catches light here at the top of the cheekbone. But you know what? I think there are some cool tones down there that I want to make sure I'm not missing, where the eye socket turns towards the cheekbone there. And so just by adding a tiny bit of ivory black and yellow ochre to my skin tones that I've already mixed up, I can get some nice cooler transitional values there at the eye socket. I had ultramarine blue in my palette mostly because of the model's eye color, but I also could use it to add some cools along this inside corner of the eye socket as well. If the black isn't doing it for me, I can add a little bit of the blue. Just be real careful that you get those values as close as possible though, because we definitely don't want it to look like a black eye. All right, on the other side of my pile of mixed up skin tones here, I'm going to start some grays. Maybe a little bit darker. Now I'm squinting at my reference photo a lot while I do this, because this is where I see a lot of people run into trouble. The white of the eye isn't really white. It's just whatever value it is relative to the light source. And so looking at where our light source is, it's coming from over there to our right, or the model's left. And so this part of the eye is flooded with light, but as it turns away, that spherical shape gradually turns into shadow. So this value is probably still not dark enough, and neither is this one. I'll get there. But I want to make sure that it feels like it's turning, like it is a spherical shape. That is so absolutely crucial for painting a realistic, successful looking eye. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this series on 20-minute oil paintings as much as I am, I hope you'll check out my learning site, Learn from Anna Rose Bain. It's a site specifically designed for courses and instructional videos, and all of my videos are on there for you to enjoy. In fact, you can even see the conclusion of this painting. I spend some more time on it, and you can check that out on the site. Okay, back to the video. And a lot of the time I'll have my students do a study in a sphere painting, because it's the same idea, just to catch on to that identifying the light source and figuring that out and how that might even relate to something like an eye. All right, I'm going to switch to my flat, which is a soft sable. Now that I've got some paint up there, I can start loading up my darks even more. Maybe mix it over to the side here so I get some pure color. I don't want to cover up the value that I had for the eyebrow entirely. I'm just going to put that dark kind of on the inside of the shape that I've already created there, so that some of that lovely brown that I put up at the beginning is still showing. One thing to pay attention to is, when you're mixing these darks that go inside the skin, such as right here along the side of the nose, I try to avoid using pure black, simply because it is still within the face, it's still a fleshy structure, and actually the warmer and the redder you can go with that, the more lifelike it's going to look. So I'm noticing some reds along the nose here, some red up into here, and of course now I'm starting to get a little bit smaller, more specific with my shapes. But all knowing, that I only have 20 minutes, you could spend a lot longer at this stage of the painting, simply figuring out exactly where those values are, where those larger shapes are, identifying that first, and taking your time on it. But again, that's not really the point of this exercise. This exercise is to teach us how to respond instinctively and intuitively to the values and the shapes that we're seeing in front of us. No matter what subject matter is thrown at us, we should be able to do this every time. Of course, it does help to know some anatomy, such as, what I just said about the corners of the eye and the tear ducts and all that. But you don't have to know every name of every body part to be a successful, realistic painter. As long as you're good at seeing and observing and painting what you see, painting your observation of the light source, and being really intentional about capturing that accurately. Now, because this is wet and wet, the paint is going to slide around a lot. That's okay. Embrace it. I'm seeing some cool right there. I don't know if I'm going to keep that or not. I don't typically like to put cools at creases, but if I put it right up next to like a hot, darker tone right there, I think I could get away with it. Again, something like the crease at the eyelid might be better portrayed with like a dark red, earthy red. So I've just kind of mixed my cadmium red with the transparent oxide brown, and that seems to be working pretty well. Squinting back down, I'm noticing that I need to go much darker with this section right here underneath the eyebrow. You can make some greener tones with the ochre and the blue, or with the black. If you happen to see some of that color in there, which I do, that's too bright in value. So I'll go back in and darken that. I'm trying to be careful not to get too caught up in painting all the hairs of the eyebrow. And of course the eyelashes, boy, you could really get caught up in that, huh? I think painting a couple of them if we have time. But let's see, I've got about 7 minutes left. Oh, that's plenty of time. Okay, so let's go back in here with some of that lighter skin tone. It's basically just white, transparent brown, and some red. Put in some of that catch light at the corner of the eye. A lot of people paint, they see this red on the inside corner of the eye and they just want to put that in every single portrait. I do see that often, but not every time. So just be careful that you're not just painting what you know, but also what you see. And if you can combine the two in your arsenal of knowledge, painting what you know about the light, what you know about anatomy, but then also painting what you see in each individual, that's going to really be a game changer, because that's where you start to develop the ability to capture a likeness. All right, I've put off the pupil and the iris this long. I'm still using my flat Sable, pretty much grabbing pure black at this point. And I'm not painting the lashes yet. I'm just painting that value that I see at the lash line. I'm going to grab that smaller round brush now, just to pinpoint the center of the eye pupil. And then just some pure ultramarine blue. It's going to mix with what's already up there. This part is a little sloppy, that's okay. I can go back and refine that. And I want to make sure that this top part of the iris is in shadow. You'll notice that the lash line casts a shadow on the iris, and that also gives it that sense of 3-dimension and roundness. So very important. I think there's actually a little bit of yellow in that blue. It sounds weird, but that's what I'm seeing. And I can't seem to quite get dark enough, but we'll get there. That's better. That's what I was trying to creep up to, but I had too much white in my initial mixture for that eye. So one of the downsides of wet into wet. I'm using the side of my canvas as just to prop my hand up for some stability there. Okay, let's go. Let's go. We're almost there. Pure white? Sure, why not? Normally I don't see pure white. You're more likely to see it in a photo reference than you are in actual real life. Simply because your photo reference tends to, no matter what kind of camera you're using, it tends to wash out the lights and lose some of the color in the shadows. So that is, of course, the trade-off, right? It's easier to work from a photo in the sense that your model isn't moving, but tougher in that you lose a lot of information. I put in a highlight real quick there. Did you even see it? It happened so fast. That's how fast these can come together. All right, I'm cleaning my brush, and actually I'll clean my flat brush also, because I want to use that brush to help me soften some of my edges and make it a little less clunky looking. You know, it's kind of nice to have all these real specific brush strokes at the start, and then if you have time, you can go in and soften. When I'm softening, I'm trying not to completely obliterate the information I've already put down. I'm really just trying to knock down any ridges in the paint that don't make sense, and hopefully tie some of these values together a little bit more harmoniously. But I'm being really, really careful with my brush pressure. It's very, very light, barely touching the canvas. And only softening where I feel it makes sense. I don't want to just go in and arbitrarily soften all my edges. That's going to really weaken the painting. So I'm being intentional about which ones I go for. For example, I wanted to soften in there because that's primarily in shadow. But areas where I could have the edges razor sharp would be up here, where I'm seeing a lot more contrast. The lash line against the white of the eye. That would be a good spot to have a harder edge. Ooh, so much paint up there. I'm losing a little bit of control here. I'm also running out of time. Don't panic, don't panic. Just push the paint around until it's in the right spot. There's that dark along this edge too. But as I squint down, I notice that this side of the white of the eye still needs to be darker. It's so much darker than you might think. All right, throwing in a couple lashes, why not? Don't go overboard with this. A little can go a long way. And then here's another area as things fade into shadow where we can soften edges. Let's go ahead and darken that again. Just in a couple key spots. Boy, that really gives it some punch, huh? Real quick, putting in one more value here where that lower lid turns up into the white of the eye. And then some catch light right there. Oh yeah. That's it. Okay. Time's up. There you go, guys. There's your eye, as requested. I just have one more little thing I want to do, just so it doesn't drive me crazy, and that's to soften this right here, right here. Actually combine that up into the eyebrow. And then there's this little blip right here that doesn't make a lot of sense either, so that can go away. Okay, well, you know, things like this didn't quite make it, but we got the eye, we got the basic structure down, we got the values, the colors. And if you wanted to spend another 20 minutes really refining, you could go in and soften edges around the iris. Of course, soften that transition down to the cheekbone and along the nose and so forth. Every painting has different stages and steps that it can go through and different levels of progression. But, you know, for 20 minutes, I'm pretty happy with this. I hope you enjoy painting along and give it a try for yourself. So continue, please, sending me requests. Let me know what you would like to see next.